So we decided to focus only on the software as a service. And that's what we were building when ChatGPT happened. And essentially it just erased the problem statement we were working on one hand, but on the other hand also made it clear why a product like what we were working on was necessary.
Welcome to Physicists in the Wild. My name is Aggie Branczyk. In this series, we chat with physicists who pursued careers outside of academia. In this episode, we chat with Amir Feizpour, who did his PhD in quantum optics and is now the founder of Aggregate Intellect.
What we started was some sort of an innovation marketplace. The idea being go to startups, go to government, go to entities and say, what are the interesting R&D projects you have? We'll take it to our community. If somebody builds something you want, you buy it, we take a cut. And we did that a few times. It was a lot of fun, lots of very interesting projects, but scaling that as a business proved to be very challenging. So we decided to focus only on the software and do a boring business model like a software as a service. And that's what we were building when ChatGPT happened. And essentially it just erased the problem statement we were working on one hand, but on the other hand also made it clear why a product like what we were working on was necessary. After ChatGPT, we decided to explore other markets. What we were building, essentially a knowledge management system that is powered by large language models that helps you quickly explore and write different types of documents.
How long have you been running Aggregate Intellect?
So I founded the company in January 2019. So it's going to be almost 5 years very soon.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Still alive.
Still alive, yeah. So I imagine a lot of things have changed over this time, but maybe if we focus on the more recent time, can you talk about what your day-to-day is like?
If you want to focus on very, very, very recently I became 40. And after I became 40, I decided that I needed a lot more organization in my life and work. I've been a lot more organized about what I want to spend my days on. I've been emphasizing health a lot. A big problem that I have, and a lot of startup founders have, is that they don't have a boss to tell them what to work on. So I have to determine what needs to be done. I'm trying this new experiment now where on Mondays and Wednesdays, I only do task work. I don't take any meetings. On Tuesdays, I do meetings, virtual meetings. On Thursdays, I do in-person meetings. Fridays are a bit of mix of everything. And up to this point, over the past, 4 years, I didn't work this way. I was just very haphazard, all over the place, at the mercy of my calendar and meetings, etc. And it was not efficient and created a lot of anxiety. So over the past few months, I've been feeling significantly better, a lot more productive, a lot more purposeful and intentional about where I'm going and what I'm doing.
What are your most and least favorite parts of being a startup founder?
There are no least favorite parts. No, I'm kidding. Some tasks are very, very, very boring, like accounting. I strongly dislike it, but I'm the only person responsible for it, so I have to suck it up and do it. So having to do admin work like that, I honestly didn't know I signed up for it, but I did. But everything else about it is a lot of fun. To some extent, I also am not running a very typical startup. So my company is not, successful and fancy like all the VC-backed, companies, because of some choices I made. I wanted the community to remain a part of what I did, and I wanted to work on problems that are fun and exciting for me. So I think every day has a highlight, because it doesn't feel like work. It feels like I'm just doing a passion project that is a lot of fun, that happens to be a business too. And if I play my cards right, then it doesn't even, like, the question of work-life balance doesn't even make sense, because everything is just merged into each other, blurred into each other, and I'm doing things that I enjoy doing.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience as a PhD student and postdoc?
Oh, which part? So the beginning was very bumpy, I would say. Most people who do a PhD go through this phase transition of being a student to being a researcher. So, the first 2 years I was like, I need to be told what to do, etc. But, eventually I learned, no, I can do whatever I want. So, and I think that phase transition was interesting. And, sometimes when I think back and, whenever I'm talking to PhD students, like, for example, the ones that are working with me right now, I usually tell them that the faster you get to that transition, the easier the, grad school and PhD will be, and the more fun it will be.
So how did you decide to leave academia?
Oh, in a very hard way. I was, just past my 30s. And I think that's sort of the quarter life crisis was settling in. And I was like, oh, what do I want to do with my life and all those good questions. But I think the best advice was really, if you're unsure, just do a postdoc in a good school. That usually means that both options remain open for you, and you have 2 years to figure out what your life is going to be. And that's exactly what I did. And in the middle of that postdoc, I remember one morning I woke up and it was clear as crystal that I was going to leave. So, and that was right after I submitted my very first serious grant application. As soon as I did that, I was in Oxford in one of the top labs in the field. There were probably 10, 15 postdocs in that lab, and 6 of them were submitting with me at the same time. And I was thinking, 1 or 2 of us are going to get this. And everybody who's submitting with me is at least as qualified as I am, and a lot of them significantly better. So in this, crazy competitive space, I think if I want to work this hard and still be in the, noise of luck, I might as well try that elsewhere. So that's really the thought process that happened right in the middle of my postdoc. So I took the second year of my postdoc mostly teaching myself AI, doing projects, doing some courses, stuff like that, and using that time to learn how to get a job in AI industry.
What skills would you say are crucial for being a startup founder?
Survival skills. I'm only half joking. Like mental resilience is a huge thing. Like, the ability to not be scarred and, die with every setback is extremely important. And having done a PhD, a lot of us have built that resilience of not giving up. And a lot of people don't put that on their resume because, they're like super focused on, I did these projects and technical things, etc. Right? But that mental resilience, like the ability not to give up on a thing, even though it's not working for 6 years, extremely important. Learning how to learn, right? Like just the ability to learn very quickly and get off the ground and run is extremely important. Again, like the thing that we do in PhD a lot, and just the general problem solving, critical thinking capabilities that you acquire during a PhD. Just not trusting anything, being skeptical about everything. That remains with you in any setting, and if you can really grab that, remove the parts that were about physics, adapt it to a new space, then that's significantly important. Adopting the business work processes, but also if you're starting your own company, that's the bread and butter of what you're doing.
What about networking?
I'm very bullish about networking. I think the example that I like to give, when I was hiring for a data science role, I would put out a job ad, and within 3 days, I have 450 resumes, right? The recruiter will go through them and chooses 50, 60 of these. So immediately 400 of them are slashed. I have not even seen them. And the recruiter with their limited knowledge are judging if you're worthy of being in that 50. Then I get the 50, and I have to look at these 50 resumes in 10-minute time windows that I have between my meetings. And I'm hoping to start inviting people to interviews in the next few days, right? So I'm spending probably 1 to 2 minutes per resume, if you're lucky. Now, think about that process versus the process of referral. I'm getting a referral from one of my employees that is saying, this person is awesome, take a look at their resume. It is immediately in a different pile. So it doesn't mean that well, obviously I'm going to be biased because the person that I trust told me that this is relevant, look at it. But even if I'm completely skeptical, it is in a different pile. Like when I'm going through 50 things, I'm like, oh my God, I have 50 things. I have to just go through them quickly. But when I have one thing to look at, two things to look at, three things to look at, I just have more freedom of thought to look at it, right? So I'm just painting the picture of what happens at the back end. So now the way you get there to that referral is through networking. Like it is, the larger your first order network is, the more trusted that first order network is, the more they know that you're looking, the more likely it is that your resume ends up in the inbox of the hiring manager versus that crazy pile of garbage that nobody's paying enough attention to hire from. So you have to network, you have to make sure people know you, you have to make sure you're on top of mind, and you cannot reach out to people and say, can you refer me for this job, if that's the very first interaction you're having, right? You have to build and farm so that you can harvest later. So,
and you also highlighted projects earlier on.
A lot of the people that are probably the audience of your show are people who are coming from a completely different background into a completely new field, right? Or at least they're considering doing that. So when I'm looking at the resume of a person that is like that, it is very unlikely that it contains stuff that I need to make a decision, right? So you've done a PhD in condensed matter physics. You were, trapped in the lab for years and years and years. You did this absolutely amazing set of experiments, but it has nothing to do with the finance job that I'm trying to fill. But as a hiring manager, I have only one objective. Can this person, if hired, solve the problem I have? And the problem I have is I want to do all of these projects so that they get promoted. So can you come in and solve that problem for me? That's all I need to know. So now you can think about how you're going to convince me in 1 minute that you're the person to do that, right? So the information architecture of your resume becomes extremely important. But then the content of it is very important too. So a lot of the information that you might put on your resume based on your PhD work might not be directly related unless you reframe it. You start, structuring it in a way that says, well, I did this thing, the subject matter was whatever, but these are the skills I learned. This is how I did it. This was my thinking process. This was my problem solving process, etc., etc. A lot of people hesitate to put personal projects on their resume. I think that's stupid. Like you should definitely do personal projects because a lot of the time we are humans. We are just looking for keywords. As a hiring manager, when I'm trying to decide if a resume should be invited to an interview at 5 p.m. after many meetings, I'm probably looking for keywords. Having that set of projects that you've done can catch my eye, extremely important. And that's the way I try to answer the question, is this person capable of solving the problem I have? Like, again, like you have to really think about a tired hiring manager at 5 p.m. after many meetings. How can they notice me? Like, that's so important.
Was there anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to share with our listeners?
One last thing is how important communities are, because they can help you gain, like, they're literally the social capital that you might need to make a significant transition. For most people out there, there is a community somewhere, and that community and network is going to make a huge difference. Like, I think my company is still alive after almost 5 years only because the community existed around it. For a lot of people, it might be, like, they might say, I'm an introvert. No, I don't need those things, but you do. I'm not saying go hang out with people 24/7, right? Like, do it, just provide value, and the value could be, answering questions in a community, interacting with them, going to events, etc. Just being present on top of mind makes a huge difference.
I like the way that you phrased it, because I know a lot of PhD students kind of cringe at the idea of networking, but phrasing it as building your community, I think that's a really nice way of framing it. Thank you, Amir. This was a really wonderful interview, and I'm sure our listeners got a lot out of it.
Thanks for having me.